Hi, welcome to the deep end. My name doesn't matter. Let's dive in. In Romans chapters 1 through 3, we have a section on sin. We've covered that in another video. In chapter 3, verses 1 through 20, we come to the end of that section where Paul is discussing strictly the idea of what sin is and how sin affects us. The power of chapter 3 is that no one is able to be saved. That no one is capable of saving themselves or being righteous on their own. In fact, chapter 3 begins by asking the question, what advantage is it to be a Jew? And there's great value in being Jewish and being born religious. So for our context, let's think about this in terms of what value is there in being born religious, or being born in a church, or being born having some moral fiber around you and in you. So if you'll think about it that way, what you'll see is that there's a tremendous benefit in that you are given an environment in which you can thrive and learn about morality and who God is and what God has said. And eventually that law that you learn can be used to teach you your desperate need for Christ. There's a phrase that I want you to memorize. It's this idea that the truth of God does not depend on the actions of man. In other words, God's righteousness and holiness and goodness is not dependent on your righteousness or your goodness or your holiness. He is those things naturally, and therefore when he says or does things, it is true regardless of whether or not you accept or believe it. Now, the outline of Romans 3 is pretty simple. He argues that there is benefit to being a Jew, but that benefit is not salvation. There is no salvific benefit to being born into a religious community that is the people of God. Instead, our unrighteousness is used to show us our desperate need for His righteousness. So Romans 3 verses 9 through 18 says this: "What then? Are Jews any better off? No, not at all. For we have already charged that both Jews and Greeks are under sin. As it is written, none is righteous. No, not one. No one understands. No one seeks God. All have turned aside. Together they have become worthless. No one does good, not even one. Their throat is an open grave. They use their tongues to deceive. The venom of asps is under their lips. Their mouth is full of curses and bitterness. Their feet are swift to shed blood. In their paths are ruin and misery. The way of peace they have not known. There is no fear of God before their eyes." So this section on sin ends with this statement that people are sinful. Go figure. And that people are unable to be righteous on their own. There is no way for a person to become righteous without an external force intervening in their soul to make them righteous. So here we have this concluding statement in verse 19 and 20. It says, "Now we know whatever the law says, it speaks to those who are under the law. So everyone is under the law, so that every mouth may be stopped and the whole world may be held accountable to God." You see, this is the reality that one day we will all stand before God. And when we stand before God, there will be no excuse for our error, for our sin, or for our wickedness. We are wicked all on our own. He didn't do it to us. He didn't make you that way. You became that way all on your own by your choice. And not only you, but the entire world rejected the call of God to believe and trust in Him, and to trust in Him for righteousness, and instead decided we're going to do it our own way. And then verse 20, "For by the works of the law, no human being will be justified in his sight, since through the law comes knowledge of sin." So we've got this trouble that we have as humans, that there is a law that we have become adherent to, and in becoming adherent to it, we have recognized that we are wicked. And if we're honest, we're wicked all the time. What's beautiful about this first section is that God is still God. You see, the truth of God and His holiness does not depend on the actions of men. Just because men are unholy and wicked and ungodly does not make God unholy, wicked, and ungodly. Instead, it magnifies the glory and holiness and purity and righteousness of God, because His character does not depend on our actions for Him to be holy. So God is righteous whether you are good or whether you are evil. He is still God. His character and His glory does not depend on you, but rather you depend on Him. The truth of God does not depend on the actions of man.